for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Thank you. In accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and broadcast live over the Lunenburg Public Access channel, on Facebook Live, on the Public Access Facebook page, and will be uploaded to the Lunenburg Access YouTube within 24 hours after the conclusion of the meeting. The following information is provided for members of the public that would like to view and participate remotely in the public comment at the beginning and end of the meeting. And this is the Zoom call portion. If you have a computer, a smartphone, or a tablet, and have the Zoom app, you can use that. Tonight's webinar ID is 909-174-0347. If you do not have such a device but still would like to participate by phone, you can do so by dialing 888-475-4499, and once again, the webinar ID is 909-174-0347. The posted agenda lists all the items which may be discussed at the meeting and are those reasonably anticipated by the chair. Votes may be taken as a result of these discussions. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may also be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by the open meeting law. So, do I have any public comment this evening from the board?
No comment.
Yeah, yes.
Mr. Jeffries.
I have two public comments tonight. The first is I want to acknowledge that on Saturday there was a dedication to Lance May at one of our cemeteries here in town. And Lance May committed many years of his life to public service to the community. His son Matt and I went to school together and continues to reside in the community and works here and raises a family here. So I just want to offer my support to that dedication. I know that we weren't able to have representation there due to multiple conflicts for the members of the board, but nonetheless, it was really important to recognize the contributions of the servants of our community. I also want to just briefly reflect on 9/11, and I know that our community was impacted. Sheila Sozik, one of the long-term administrative support at the school system, lost her son on 9/11, who was a graduate of Lunenburg High in 1994. And I know that these days brings a lot of difficult memories. I'm sure all of us can remember where we were when 9/11 occurred. I know for me, I was in college, in English class, and I was already in the reserves, and I remember everyone was walking around campus and coming out and trying to figure out why so many people were out of class, and went to the student center, and there was a TV, and just in time to watch the second plane hit the building. And I remember being a reservist in the medical brigade and running to my car, and of course I was 80 pounds thinner, so that was possible back then, and I already received a activation warning from the military to respond, and I was in a medical unit. And I note this to say that many of us in response to 9/11, our lives were changed. I know mine was changed in the way that our nation probably was more situated in a war footing, which resulted in me being sent to Iraq and Kuwait in 2003 at the very beginning of that conflict. And I had the occasion this last weekend to meet with my old colonel, and she, as a female soldier, joined a largely male organization and rose through the ranks to be a full-board colonel, made significant contributions, and during our wartime experience, rewrote the doctrine on the evacuation of patients in a combat theater. And it was a moment of reflection. She's working in her community, Leicester, as on the finance committee, and just that continuation of service that as tragedy affects us, that oftentimes it motivates us to want to give back, to want to do more, and it gives a lot of meaning to what our community is all about, which is a combination of people from multiple walks of life working together for the common good of us all. So I just want to reflect on that and offer my condolences to those personally affected by 9/11, and the trust that, we're here and we support you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jeffries. And solely concur on both of those points. I'm sorry that I wasn't able to be here. Kind of a tie-in for both your pieces. I wasn't able to be here for the dedication of the cemetery building, and I would have otherwise been there for the cemetery department and that dedication. But I was not there because I was at a wedding, which happened to be in Jersey City, directly across on 9/11. The wedding was actually on the 20th anniversary of 9/11, right across from the Freedom Tower. Like, literally, it feels like you could touch it because it was so close, right across the Hudson River. So it's a very moving experience, from the joy of a wedding and, of course, the remembrances of 9/11, and especially on a special anniversary of it, a round number. So there was a lot of activity there that day, and when we arrived at the location, actually there was already a ceremony for the Port Authority police, and had their own dedication and memorial service there. So we walked kind of in the middle of that before the actual wedding ceremony, so it was kind of a mixed feelings day. So anyway, any public comment from the public this evening? Mr. Beardmore.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Peter Beard, 282 Pleasant Street. Thank you both for your comments. I fully concur with your personal observations. I'm here tonight with also two comments. My first is really an announcement in my capacity as chair of the Finance Committee, and to extend an invitation to you and the members of the public to a joint meeting that we will be hosting, the Finance Committee with the School Committee, on Thursday, October 28th, in this room. We'll be hosting Tracy O'Connell-Novick, who is a field director for the Mass Association of School Committees, and the topic will be Chapter 70. So as we discussed briefly at town meeting, Chapter 70 is an issue of concern for the Finance Committee and the School Committee, and hopefully the town at large, as our funding has certainly not increased in line with our expenses over the last several years. And that is also, under the shadow of the Student Opportunity Act, which was intended to be a rising tide to lift all ships, but for some reason we have not experienced that benefit as of yet. And so the purpose of that meeting will really be informational. Ms. Novick will come with some prepared remarks about Chapter 70 in general, but also about Lunenburg's unique situation or particular situation. I don't anticipate that there'll be any decisions made that evening about course of action, but it will be a good opportunity to hopefully to learn and gain some insights in terms of the Chapter 70 predicament that we find ourselves in. And I will also be inviting our legislative delegation to that as well.
Excellent.
So that's Thursday, October 28th at 7 p.m. here in this room. My second comment is in my capacity as an individual, so I want to stipulate that I am not speaking on behalf of the Finance Committee this evening. It's strictly Pete Beardmore, 282 Pleasant Street. And it's to voice concern about the topic that you'll be discussing tonight with members of the TC Pasio's Building Committee. I've supported this effort since day one. I supported the original funding 2.5 years ago to formulate the committee. I supported the funding in the spring to take a look at the replacement cost for a comparative analysis. But it strikes me right now that we are 4 months down the road from annual town meeting. We are probably 6 weeks out from getting the information that we commissioned at annual town meeting, and we are 9 weeks out from special town meeting. And I'm very concerned that that 3-week period is not sufficient time for the town to have a fully informed discussion about the merits of the argument to renovate or not to renovate the TC Pasio's school. I think that it's a better discussion to be had at annual town meeting, and I really don't see a need to rush that discussion. I do understand that there are members of the building committee who feel a need after 2.5 years to bring a decisive article before town meeting. But I can tell you, and I certainly appreciate all of the work that's been done by this committee and the hundreds of hours that each individual has brought forth. I can tell you as a professional marketer, I'm constantly telling executives and product leaders to look at the product through the customer's eyes, not through their own eyes. And as a town meeting voter, I would rather have a fully informed, substantive discussion that we can fully vet this without rushing it inside of a 3-week period with all of the information that we're going to need. With respect to the third article that's being brought forth, to essentially recharge the committee, I'm also concerned about that one. And having not read the text but discussed it in some detail with 2 members of the committee, I'm concerned that it's putting us on a path where we would do a direct replacement with the needs that we assessed that we could put into the TC Passio's structure. And, I would equate it to the old George Carlin routine about your house and your stuff, and the amount of stuff you have always kind of equates to the amount of space that you have in your house or your closet space. And I think that there is, not necessarily intentionally, but I think that there was a component of that in the plan for the TC Passio's renovation, and rightfully so. That's the space that we had available. But to consider a multi-million-dollar building project, I think we need to look at not only the needs of the school department and the various town departments, but also the locations. And I've said many times, if I was king for a day, I would put an education building there, and I would put a town building someplace else. But I don't think that article, as it's been described to me, puts us in that direction. And again, at a special town meeting that's only 9 weeks away, I think that this committee, the select board, really needs to weigh in on, if we're not going to renovate TC Passio's, what is the proper way forward? Understanding the relative costs as best we can, understanding the opportunities that we have with land available or land that we could potentially acquire. So while ironically we've been at this for 2.5 years, and I'm sensitive to that, I think we need to pump the brakes on this one and bring these articles with all of the information to annual town meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And what I would say is that you had good momentum, so I wasn't going to interrupt you, but during this article, if you want to stay around, there will be I'll probably entertain a public comment section on that agenda item, so.
I appreciate that. Unfortunately, I have another commitment at 7:30,
okay.
so
Well,
I can't be
then
here,
thank
but
you for your
I
comments.
really appreciate you taking the time to hear me
Oh,
tonight.
my pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Beermore.
Any other public comment from the public? Okay, so 7:05. Oh, announcements. You have any announcements?
No announcements.
Okay, but they are wanted. Announcements are wanted. 7:05, Lunenburg Boys and Girls Club regarding Shrieks and Creeks event and the request to block off Memorial Drive October 23rd from 6:30 to 9:30 p.m. Mr. DeBraga.
Hello, I am Brent Braga, the Program Director for the Boys and Girls Club of Lunenburg. Thank you for your time. Want to first thank the DPW, Police Department, and the Fire Department for helping out in all their little ways to make the event possible. Without their support, we wouldn't be able to pull our event off. We do take pride in the event that it's not really about a haunted house or scaring people. It's really just a fun excuse to get a lot of people together. Bring the community together. For anybody that doesn't know, we offer any nonprofit group or school group, student councils, things like that, space free of charge at the Monster Midway to sell refreshments and snacks. They do have to sign up through the club. They get to keep all their funding. And the reason we do that is because, like we said, it's the idea of bringing the community together. It's not really about us, the club, making a bunch of fundraising money or benefiting from it necessarily, other than bringing the community together. So I'd like to thank everybody, and also Michael Ray, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
So you have, just so people at home know, this will be the what anniversary of
This will be
Shrieks and
the
Creeks?
sixth Shrieks and Creeks. It actually started as a haunted house as a child at my Boys and Girls Club growing up at Hudson. That got bought out by Spooky World, which you guys all may know of, the big Spooky World. It actually was started at a Boys and Girls Club, and that grew from there into an actual massive production. And I always felt that growing up, it was it was the only fundraising thing that everybody wanted to do, and it was because it was fun. And I, as a staff member, said, as soon as I get a chance to build some kind of haunted house community type thing, I want to make sure I bring as many of the community members in as possible to enjoy building it, painting it, designing it, acting in it, and then hopefully fundraising some money while doing it and having fun.
That you have met with the DPW director and the police chief?
We
correct?
have, and they've given their blessing.
Okay.
They've been great every year with that, too.
Yep. So, anybody have any questions?
No questions.
No?
Okay, so I would entertain a motion regarding the request to block off Memorial Drive, October 23rd from 6:30 to 9:30 p.m. for the Boys and Girls Club event of Shrieks and Creeks.
So moved, with pleasure.
Second. Not with pleasure?
With pleasure.
Okay, good.
We're gonna scare you extra good if you come now.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, so unfortunately, for things related to Halloween, I don't participate usually in voting, so. But I think, obviously, anything that brings community together is a good thing.
Did I say you don't vote on things that have to do with Halloween?
I don't participate in Halloween or things related to Halloween.
I'm sure there's a whole discussion there
Yep.
that I'm not having
It
tonight.
seems to come up every year, so.
I probably have some insight on that. Being somebody that's helped run haunted houses for quite some time, so, it's not the first time. So I
Okay, so, well, I think it's a great event. I'm appreciating that last year, of course, nothing happened, so, in the world, so, well, nothing fun happened
yeah,
in the
nothing
world.
fun happened. Yeah.
But thank you for doing it, and I look forward to another event, and if I can help, let me know.
Yes, please. If anybody would like to pitch in, let us know.
Yep.
And also letting other groups know that we are a resource if they want to hit us up and get a spot. I know some groups have raised as much as $500 for their own cause. The Best Buddies,
Cool.
last time we ran it, not last year, I think they did about $550 in their own fundraising.
Is this a Friday or a Saturday?
This is a Saturday.
Saturday.
Yeah, and the rain date is the following Saturday, which I believe is the 30th. And the original date's the 23rd of October.
Okay. Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And one abstention.
Excellent. Thank you guys very much. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you for your hard work.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Okay, 7:10. We have a meet with the principal assessor regarding the special town meeting warrant article to increase the elderly exemption, Mass General Law, Chapter 59, Section 5, 41C. So who is presenting that?
That's us. That's us. That's all of us. Yeah, right. Okay.
Well, there's always somebody who has the short straw.
Can I introduce the new principal assessor?
You may.
Christine Kumar.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Where am I going with this? This is, the Board of Assessors has voted to submit an article for the special town meeting. I guess the best way I can explain it to start with is that it was never, the amounts were never confirmed by town meeting that had been used in the past. So we're just trying to clean up a little bit, do a little bit of clean up with the bookkeeping to just go to town meeting to vote on the income and asset guidelines that were used in the past, because it was never, I guess the previous assessors never brought it to, not the previous board, the previous people in the assessor's office never brought it to town meeting. And the other thing that the board voted, the current exemption under 41C is $750. They would like to increase that to $1,000 for the exemption, just to help the people. We do get reimbursed some of this on the cherry sheet. It's not an exact amount like the other exemptions are. This one is based on how many, how much money the state puts in that coffer, how much goes to all the exemptions that have set amounts in all the 351 cities and towns in Massachusetts. And then what's left over of that is divided amongst all the Clause 41s and what they reimburse. So it's not a set amount. But we looked at how many people we currently have getting the exemption, and would cost the town around $6,000. So it's a minimal, and I think that's what the board decided, was that extra $250. It's not much, but it'll help a lot of the people, because the majority of these people do only make less than $20,000 a year, so.
So if I could summarize, just to make sure, the majority of the article is to formalize what the practice that was already in place.
The word I was looking for,
Okay.
yes.
And with one difference, which is the 750 exemption would be raised to 1,000. Is that
Correct,
Okay.
yes. Okay.
I am fully in support of that.
Can I just,
Yes.
Sue, can you explain how this is funded through the overlay?
Oh, okay, so, on the recap sheet, there is an amount that is raised on page 2 of the recap sheet. It's, for exemptions and abatements, so this amount is actually raised on a taxation, but again, as I said, we do get and that covers all the exemptions, the, service-connected disabled, that's the legally blind, the over 70 people that don't qualify with income, but they qualify with another amount of assets, that's the 17D. That money is raised on the recap sheet on page 2, would get raised by taxes, and then, like I said, a good portion of it is then reimbursed to the town through the cherry sheet.
Traditionally, what percentage?
You can't, oh yeah, it's not like, for instance, take the disabled, service-connected disabled veterans that get the 400. We get reimbursed, I believe it's like $325, so it's a set amount which it's a good percentage of it. It could be, I want to say, yeah, I should have looked at my numbers, I do apologize. I could have looked at last year. So it is a good.
It fluctuates, right?
It does fluctuate, well, that's what I said, it fluctuates, because
Available
Right,
at
no,
the
no,
end.
I understand
Right.
that. I just said traditionally, what is the average? I mean, I
yeah,
realize it
I
fluctuates.
should have looked at, I should have gotten that for you, but like I said, in the state budget, they have, they have their budget amount to reimburse for all the exemptions, and then whatever left, depending on how many, how they divide it up throughout the city and towns, is just basically what they feel like giving everybody, I think.
But
So,
as you said, the worst case is $6,000. That's.
is the worst case, that would be an extra $6,000.
To help people
yeah.
in need, I'm more than happy with that
Okay.
additional exemption personally.
Yes. Absolutely.
Anybody have any questions? Don't run so fast, just in case. Anybody have any questions?
I'm ready for retirement, I'm sorry.
No questions.
No question.
All right.
All right, thank you.
So, we're not looking to vote on this, are we?
No,
Are we-
this is just informational
Okay.
purposes.
Well, I guess we have to
Vote will-
vote to put it on though, right? I mean,
You will when it comes to.
Okay,
when
so
the
we don't have to
warrant
vote on it
closes.
now. I appreciate your explanation and your time and and the new assessor, or the incoming assessor, and the chair of the Board of Assessors, thank you. Okay, 7:30, now we're actually ahead of time. That's a good thing. So,
Thank you.
thanks. Is the TC Passios Building Design Committee, are you guys ready? All right. Come on down. So we are to meet with the TC Passios Building Design Committee regarding special town meeting warrant articles.
So you're the point
So-
guy.
We, Mr. Chair, we published this as a public meeting at 7:30. So
Oh, okay, well,
I should open that.
okay.
Or should we
So-
wait till 7:30?
Yes, so that's fine. So let's see.
So find something to,
Do we have approval of minutes? We have minutes of September 7th. Has everybody read through them?
Yes.
Are there any modifications? If no modifications are requested, I will entertain a motion regarding the approval of minutes of September 7th, 2021.
I move to approve the minutes of September 7th, 2021 as presented.
Second.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Any warrants or action? No warrants, right, this week?
Yep.
Oh, there are warrants. Oh, this will definitely take us till 7:30. All right. Accounts payable warrant in the amount of $588,815.66. A payroll warrant in the amount of $888,578.11. And another accounts payable in the amount of $615,004.23. Any action items from the board?
Yes.
Mr. Jeffries?
For our goals, I know that you and I had talked offline, but can we, I'm not going to be here for the next meeting. At the first week in October, is it possible for us to pick up discussion on requests for demolition and just kind of work through what those timelines and dates are going to be?
You can certainly do that.
All right.
So that's for the October 5th meeting, you said?
I'm not sure the date, but
think
first
it's
meeting in
the fifth.
October.
The 28th, the
Yep,
35th,
October
the
5th.
4th. Is it the 4th?
It's on the agenda, it's the 5th. but-
Okay. Yes, the 5th, yes.
That's it.
September. Okay, any other action item issue, action file issues? Or action items? How close are we getting? Didn't even take us
2
there.
minutes.
All right. Anybody have any committee reports? Mr. Marino?
None.
Mr. Franco?
I have none.
Mr. Jeffries?
I have brief updates. MPO has been canceled again. It's 2 months in a row that has been canceled. The Council on Aging met this morning. I need to check in with Sue to give a more proper committee report next week. But the brief summary that I received from Ms. Lincoln, Debbie Lincoln, is that they're working through just some of the rules and regulations. The state's going to be pushing out some guidance on changes to how Council of Agings operate, and so they're anticipating that to come out soon, and then, you know, there will be more discussions related to that. And there is a breakfast, I believe is this coming Monday, the 20th, and it's a volunteer appreciation breakfast that is at 9 a.m. at the Senior Center.
Excellent.
And I plan on being in attendance for that.
And I have no committee reports. The Capital Planning Committee was supposed to meet before this meeting today, but did not have a quorum and I was unable to attend, which is probably why it didn't have a quorum. So we will reschedule that meeting. We have no interviews, appointments, reappointments.
None this week.
Okay, I'm really stretching this now for the 30 seconds. I know.
A reminder that the community outreach meeting is on September 28th at 7 p.m. in this room, and there will be a Zoom meeting information as far as that.
Only Zoom, or will it be both?
No, it's hybrid.
A hybrid,
so-
okay. With the information that the chair of the FinCom, Mr. Beardmore, gave us, can we put that on this? that-
October
that date?
28th.
Yeah, so we know it's on the agenda, so we'll remind people, because I think people will be, a certain sector of people will be interested in Chapter 70. Other people, it will probably bore to tears, but, okay. Mr. Roy, it is now officially, so you want to call your,
Yes, I will. It is 7:30, and I'll call the meeting to order with at least 5. Is there any members on Zoom, Heather? Christina thought she might join.
Someone's waiting to be let in. They're not unmuting.
Whoever, if you're listening, whoever is dialed in to the Zoom meeting,
Yeah, is either Christina or Matthew Allison on the call. Yeah, that's fine. We have a quorum, Mr. Chair, so we'll call our meeting to order
Okay.
at 7:31. So I appreciate you allowing us a few minutes of your
Thank you.
time this evening.
much time as you want.
Okay, so I'll just start if that's acceptable.
please.
Just to get the ball rolling.
Introduce yourself first.
Yes, Greg Roy. My address in town is 105 Chestnut Street, and I function as chair of the TCP Building Design Committee. And our committee met, our committee's been working over the past several months to advance the process that was approved at Springtown meeting to get a comparative estimate for the TCP building project for what it would cost to construct the project, not as a renovation to the existing building, but a comparative analysis to what it would cost to construct that in a new building. And just to sort of bring everybody back up to speed, as a reminder or as a refresher, or as new information if you didn't attend town meeting in the spring, we believe that based on the costs that we received for the renovation of TCP, that it was prudent for the town to take a comparative look at what it would cost if we were to rip down the TCP building and build a new building with a similar program. And the reason we thought that was that at the end of the day, we can put millions of dollars into the TCP building, but we're still going to be left with renovating a 70-year-old building. So we thought that it would be prudent to at least explore the idea of what it would cost if we didn't have the constraints of the existing shell of TCP on us, and what that cost would be. As it turned out, the town meeting voted to authorize that in the amount of $54,000, and we are embarking on that study now. It took us a little while to get the contract for various reasons with the architect, but we are initiating that process. We do expect that to be complete within 6 weeks. They have indicated that they think they can do that work sooner, but be that as it may, that is the schedule that we're looking at. So I think that we're looking at sort of the end of October timeframe to have that number. When we discussed this at our last TCP meeting, under the guise of future being prepared and being in a position to be able to present warrant articles at the fall town meeting, the committee agreed to ask for this time, this evening, and to put before you 3 possible articles for consideration. And it's in the spirit of our thought process at that meeting was to put us in a place to be ready to present at fall town meeting should we feel that we have enough time to do so. There was a previous speaker this evening, Mr. Beardmore, who I certainly respect, and I understand where he's coming from. And in that vein, I don't think and I don't want to speak for the committee, and they could certainly feel free to disagree with me, but I don't think it's any of our intentions to rush this process. But we do feel that we have taken a considerable amount of time now. We do feel, I'll call it an obligation, to put the renovation article before the town, because that was our initial charge. That was the charge given through your board from town meeting. And so we felt that it would be prudent to at least discuss this evening with you, the possibility of 3 articles. And our thought process is this, and I'll sort of summarize the articles. The first article would be an update article. In that article, we would update the town meeting with where we've been for the last 6 months, with a emphasis on presenting the cost analysis for this $54,000 study that we're embarking on now, so that we would give due process to, and make sure that people understand what a comparative cost would be for a build new option. The second article would then be the original funding, so funding of the original charge, so funding of the renovation project. And just to put that into terms, it would be to ask for construction funding in the amount of $23,570,000, which is the number that was arrived at by the study that we performed over the last 2 years. And that would be to renovate TCP for town offices, school uses, and community uses. And there's a very lengthy report on that whole process, the cost analysis, the program that we're proposing, on the TCP page on the Lunenburg town website, if anybody's interested. And then we had a discussion about what to do if the town meeting did not look favorably on that, and should we then have a third article that would essentially fund, or should there be, I should say, I won't use the term we, but should there be an article that would essentially fund a new construction alternative to get that to design development phase, so that we would be in a position to ask in the future for construction funding for that alternative. So, and all this, again, is in the spirit of wanting to do our job. To steal a quote from Bill Belichick, we're here to do our job, and we want to make sure that we're not dragging the process down. But I also don't want to stand here and make anybody feel like we're trying to speed this process along faster than we feel than anybody feels it should go. And I think the committee would agree that we operate, and we feel strongly that we operate under the charge of your board, and so that's why we're here this evening. We wanted to have a thoughtful discussion and hear your view, and at the very least, have an opportunity to talk this through in the public forum with you folks and with the public present. So with that, I guess if anybody else had something to add, I'm happy to entertain that, if that's acceptable.
Sure.
Dave Passios, 56 Whiting Street, member of the TC Passios Redesign Committee. Greg, thank you. You passed on the information perfectly as to what we discussed in our last meeting. I was one of the ones pushing to make sure we got these articles formulated and ready to go for a special town meeting. I think it's time we get a clear picture from the voters as to what direction we want to go. With the first article, basically all of the information that's needed, for the most part, for Articles 2 and 3 will be presented in that first article. And then Article 2, as Greg mentioned, if it passes, then we pass over Article 3. If it does not pass, then we move on to Article 2, and that will give us some direction. If they both fail, we're back to the drawing board and dissolve a committee, new committee. I don't know where we go if all three fail. But that's my thought process. And the chair of the Finance Committee is always concerned, and some of the other members, about are we going to have the numbers? And I promised them that we'd have them by the October date for the
Public hearing.
public hearing. I'm sorry, drew a blank there for a second. Yes, the public hearing prior to special town meeting. So there will not be articles going past that date without dollar numbers on them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else from Can I ask the chair, was this voted on? Did you take a vote in your committee, or was it just a discussion?
I think so. I think we did. We voted to, the committee voted for me to send you this letter and ask you for,
Okay,
for your consideration of these articles, yes.
fair enough. So I will open it up to the board, if anybody wants to start. All right, then I will be the one to start. So, first of all, thank you for coming here and for, seeking an agenda item to discuss this. I think this is an important item to everybody in town who's following this and who goes to town meetings and goes to the ballot box. I also want to thank the committee for all the continued work, past and going into the future as you embark on this new project of trying to find out what a new cost would be. That being said, I would say that what Mr. Beardmore said in public comment probably could not more closely reflect my personal opinion as well. I did have a conversation with the chair of the committee and relayed my feelings to him on that. Of the three articles, first of all, I have absolutely no objection to number one, because I think that there's been an article for a report of the current status of the design committee, because it's been so important. So every meeting that your committee has felt that there was information to share furthers the town meeting understanding of what's before them. But when it comes down to the articles about voting on them, I would say while the numbers may be in, there's a few things. First of all, I don't believe there's going to be enough time to digest those numbers in 3 weeks before a special town meeting. And I think that once we know both numbers, I am for an Article 2 and 3 come the annual town meeting. But that will give us an opportunity to meet with the public, to meet with together these two, your committee and our board, and get as much input as we can, because in the end, we don't want to have spent all this money with both of these being defeated. So I think internally the discussions will be had, and one of them will, in my view, will develop a consensus that we want to stand behind, and we want to make sure that after all this money spent, we're not left in the precarious position, as Mr. Passios indicated might happen. If both of them get defeated, then we're nowhere, because then I don't know what anybody in the town would want us to do. If you investigated for a good amount of time what to do with the reuse, and that article fails, and you do what's going to be new, and that article fails, then I don't know what other studies or designs could do. So we need to plan this carefully and make sure we get acceptance from the town to make sure, to the best of our ability. I mean, it still could happen, of course, but to the best of our ability, that it doesn't happen. And that's going to take time, and that's going to take public input, and that's going to take a concerted effort on contacting, different boards, different active members of the community to get that done. That's point number one. Point number two is, if any of these passed, we'd have to have a town election, and that means we'd have to spend, I don't know we wouldn't want to have the town election, 6 months later, one would presume, I think.
It has to be within.
It would have to be 90 days.
Right. So we'd have to spend more money just to have an election with the ballot, and that would put it, in the middle of the winter, and God knows what the conditions of, weather conditions would be, and how much of a vote you would get, et cetera. So to me, that's an added obstacle. It's not the primary one in my concern. It's an added one. And while we have, right after a town meeting, we have an election, so if anything passes, we can put that on in advance. So for those reasons, I would not be supportive of the two money article going on the special town meeting, but I would be in favor of the status report article.
If I may, Mr. Chair, I'm actually glad you spoke first, because I kind of reversed my initial impulse on this. So I think your reasoning is logical. And while I think perhaps from previous meetings, there might have been enough information to put the second article before. I do think that, before the town meeting, I think that they should go together at the same time. And also your other point about having to have a special election within 90 days, I concur with your conclusion.
I think a special election, I don't think a December or January special election bothers me as much. I think that I support the approach that the committee has taken. I support these articles going before special town meeting. I understand the concerns as voiced by Mr. Alonso, and as supported by Mr. Franco. I think that my perspective is I think I look at it from the lens of, I don't think this is a 2.5-year process. I think this has been a 200 and something year long process. So, we have never built a town hall, and, we're about to celebrate our 300th anniversary. So, I think this is long overdue. And we've had a building reuse committee that was formed. They did work for 4.5 years. There's been pauses. I think we've been trying to move in a forward direction on this for a very long time. And I think that there are going to be questions as raised by members of the community of, okay, we were looking at rehabbing a building, but now we're talking about, is this the best location for a town hall? And in my opinion, I think that this board in years past has tried to vet that decision, and I think that they have, and I wasn't a member at that time, but I think that they've hit a lot of barriers and walls and a lot of standstills, and so now we're in this position that we're in. I do think that they both need to be paired together. I don't differentiate very much between a special town meeting and annual town meeting. I think it's, for the most part, the same people, and I think that this issue has been before the town long enough that there can be an informed decision. There was a really good effort by the Lunenburg Ledger to really promote what was being discussed by the committee as it was happening. There was active participation, especially last summer, over the winter. There was a lot of discussion at this past spring town meeting about this. I think everyone's aware, but it seems as if what the approach is trying to do is say, let's put this to bed. Are we going to rehab this building or are we not? And if we're not, then let's switch gears and let's focus on building a new building in this location. And I think that the committees outside of your purview is we're not looking at other parcels. And I know internally we've had this discussion of if we start talking about other pieces of property, we need to have a new committee. Because I think not all of us, most of us are probably not interested in what will then be a 5-year-long commitment to end possibly the same way the Building Reuse Committee ended. But I do respect the opinions of, again, Mr. Alonso on this and also Mr. Franco. I am in agreement with the board, the committee.
I, too, respect the opinions of both the chair and Selectman Franco. However, I fully agree with what Selectman Jeffries has just said. This is a protracted process. I sense a lot of frustration on the part of your members. I just think a lot of money and a lot of time's been put into this already. Somehow, I don't even know what the answer is, but somehow this project has to advance, and I think it should be done sooner than later. How long has it been? How much money have we spent on studies with the advent of the reuse committee up until the present? How much money have we spent on studies already? Can you have an answer for that, or?
Well,
And I don't mean that.
I can tell you what the purview of our committee was 240, correct?
265.
265, and then plus 54, which is forthcoming. Before that, I couldn't tell you. But there's certainly more before that, to your point.
And that's not an indictment on your part. I blame a malevolent group of voters in town. I think a failed town meeting system and so on and so forth. These projects shouldn't take this long. And it's historic in this town. It took, 13 years to build a public safety building. That's absurd. It went from 700,000 to about 4.5 million. So now we're at 23 million. We could have done this project, 10 years ago at probably
less than half that? Am I wrong? So somebody's got to make a decision somewhere along the line to get this project either, as you said, done and then restarted, or just push it forward and get it done. Because in another 10 years, it's going to cost, based on what I see here, $46 million. So that's my feeling.
May I?
Mr. Franco?
I respect both opinions of Mr. Jeffries and Mr. Marino, but my concern, and I totally agree with the urgency and the need to move this along, and there's been way too much delay, but my hesitancy and concern and fear is that if we try to rush it to the special town meeting, that both articles could be defeated. I just think the time to make good cases for each of these articles and have full information before town meeting is essential so that doesn't happen. So while I completely understand the need to move this along and think the delay has been absurd and that we have been paralyzed by inaction in this town, I don't, another, 6 months to possibly have a more decisive course of action is, to my mind, worth it.
Before you go, I want to ask a rhetorical question. Well, no, it's not rhetorical. I actually want an answer to the question.
Okay.
In the minds of those who want to go forward, who support the committee's desire to go forward, what is the worst-case scenario in your mind of having spent what would be upward of $319,000? What would be the worst possible outcome of doing that in your minds?
I'm not sure I understand what you're asking me.
Well, we spent money to do something. So what would be the worst outcome that could happen if you put these questions forward? So we're going to put these two questions of money articles forward. Do you have a best scenario, a best case scenario, or do you have a worst case scenario? I'm asking you what the worst case scenario is at town meeting.
I think he just said it. I think he said it before. What's going to happen is, that's going to get voted down. There's no question about it. I think you're right. I didn't disagree with you, but he said it. They're just going to disband, and then you're going to have to form another committee and start all over again
Right.
from scratch.
So
yeah, that was what I was getting at. The question is, what strategy can we come up with to do a workaround with respect to what we already know? We know we have a malevolent group of voters in a system that really doesn't work that well. So what strategy are we going to employ to try to beat that? Because you got to do something. This is going to cost the town a fortune if we don't come up with some kind of solid strategy. And that's all I'm saying is, maybe that's what your committee ought to focus on. What strategy are you going to use to sell this? And you're right, this isn't going to fly. I guarantee you.
Right. Well, so to use that jumping off point, that is exactly my point. I would offer, as a slight editorial, calling certain sections of the public voters malevolent isn't helping marketing any one of these two plans. But that aside, I would say that you know how this goes. You know that when we came up with the capital facilities plan, what was it, in 2003? The whole thing got voted down. And then one by one, we had to come back to each one of those buildings and get them done. And it took a lot of energy and a lot of marketing. And it is marketing. It's marketing to tell people that doing nothing, like you said, is worse than doing something. And then you got to help them along with what the something is. But we don't even have the numbers of one of the two things. And although Mr. Passios is saying that the committee will have them by the public hearing, that still only leaves 3 weeks of discussion to try to help people along. We need to help people along to understand the position. It's not that I'm against the articles. I'm against the timing of the articles, because it's my feeling, and I think Mr. Franco said exactly what was on my mind, if you rush this through, if people start asking questions, how much does it cost on our tax base? What about this? What about that? What about that? It will be defeated. It won't even be defeated. It'll be defeated soundly, because when people get confused about the numbers, they'll just vote it down. That should be exactly what we don't want, I would think. So I think we need when these numbers come out, that'll give us months to say, okay, what is the plan we as a group want to go forward with? What do we think gives the best value for the town? And that we start pitching, and we have public hearings, and we have invite public response and everything. We just need that time. Without that time to ramp up the public about what to expect, which to me is impossible given 3 weeks after the numbers are going to be available, I think it's just prudent to wait till the fall to do it. Not till the spring to do it, I'm sorry.
In my mind, worst case scenario is the situation we're already in and continuing to prolong that. To me, that's the worst case scenario. And I also understand when you're serving on committees that everyone has a certain capacity. And you get to a point that when you no longer feel as if you're making a positive contribution, you're no longer engaged in the process. And I know that in this process, there's been a little bit of a standstill, after Springtown meeting with getting more funding, and what the direction is. But I guess I think these numbers have been out there. I think that we don't know the amount of Article 3, but we know it's going to be somewhere around $250,000. I mean, we know that. I mean,
250, what?
and that's a worse, and that's if we're going to spend the same amount of money that's already been spent, and we can make certain assumptions that it's going to be less, right? So we can assume that there's a ceiling there. I think we can assume on Article 2 that we're looking at, even though we don't know, on Article 3. Once we get this number back of what this building's going to cost, I think we already have comparative analysis of what it typically costs to build these buildings, and I think that there's a rough idea of we may be looking in that $18 million plus dollar frame. I think that the community has had time to mull these things over a very long period of time. I think there's been a lot of votes. I just don't agree. But it sounds as if we've given you a very split perspective tonight. So perhaps the answer is, in this process, what I think is most important is to have a solution in which there's clear consensus, and that we can't make decisions that are 50-50. We can't make decisions. We need to make decisions in which there's an overwhelming majority all the time. So in the absence of an overwhelming majority tonight, I think it's clear that the direction is going to end up being Springtown meeting. And it's not that I agree with that, because I don't, but I understand process. And that if we can't get through tonight with more than 50-50, we can't expect the town to do anything different. And these articles need 67%, if I'm correct, to pass.
Yeah. And I'm going to speak as chair, but I think maybe more personally here. I stood up in town meeting in the spring, and I basically said, we feel like, and I said it earlier tonight, we feel like the town, you folks sitting in the audience, need to know what the comparative cost is before you can make an informed decision on whether or not to spend $23,570,000 on renovating a 7-year-old building. And if the consensus of this board is that getting that number in 3 to 4 weeks prior to town meeting will not give us enough time, and I can't say I disagree, for people to digest that comparative analysis, we can't bring, just to be clear, in my opinion, as chairman, but also personally as someone that's probably going to be the one standing up there telling folks again, presenting the articles, I'm not going to stand up there and present something, a funding article for $23,570,000, if they haven't had a chance to review the comparative, and then the consensus is. So to me, the worst, I'm rambling, but to me, the worst case scenario, I was thinking about that question. It's a great question. The worst case scenario for me is we come out of town meeting and everybody's doing this, scratching their heads. I think we need to make sure we have so in my view, and anybody else can feel free to speak, but my view as sort of one member of this committee, this discussion has sort of informed my thought process a little bit. The worst case scenario is we come out of town meeting and everybody's scratching their heads. We need to have a very clear, concise presentation on this, and I think I have to agree. I think three weeks is going to be. It's going to be difficult for me personally, and my members behind me can disagree, but it's going to be difficult for me personally to stand up with a straight face and say that to the town. I think at town meeting. Now, it might be that we get these numbers way in advance, and then we can do a better job at it, but I'll just say that. Anybody can feel free to.
Mr. Passios.
Passios, again, 56 Whiting Street, and a member of the committee. First of all, unless I heard the chair's, the select board's chair incorrectly, I'd just like to clarify one thing, and that is that Article 2 would require a special election. Article 3 does not.
Right.
Okay, that's fine. And the two, what was the number you gave for that one, possibly 150,000? 250, another 250. That's a complete redesign because we don't have construction documents to build the new proposed replacement building.
But if I may interrupt for a second.
Sure.
The goal of this 54,000 is that somebody's going to give us an estimate about what a new building would cost.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. And then the last comment I'd like to make is in response to one of the other select board members' comments a few minutes ago. I personally think that the numbers are going to come in very comparative to the renovation numbers. I don't think they're going to be 18 million. I think they're going to be 21 to 24 million. That's my gut.
For what?
For the tear down and replacement of the building with the program. So I think come October, we're going to be sitting there looking at very similar numbers, two completely different projects, which I agree they are. But if we don't put these articles on the warrant and then at some point in late October say, okay, this isn't, we aren't able to vet it properly before town meeting, then we pass over them at town meeting. I don't want to lose an opportunity to be able to get a vote on the renovation. If we don't get that now, then we're to spring town meeting, and then we're to another year of design and another $250,000, and then another town meeting to get funding approved. And if we push it to, again, a special town meeting, you're going to have a special election anyway. Or you're going to wait another full year till the spring of '24.
And the escalation costs are 4% a year, roughly.
4% a year,
So every year we
correct.
delay this, it goes up notably.
So I just hope that you give us the opportunity to have the option right up to town meeting rather than shoot it in the foot right now. Thank you.
Well, right now, clearly, the board is split. So there's not going to be a vote tonight, so we'll have to wait till our fifth member is back when we vote on the article.
So, Mr. Chair, let me just understand something here. The only thing we're trying to accomplish here is giving town meeting the two numbers. Am I correct? The number to renovate the existing building or tear it down and build a new one. Is that what it is? Is that what you were saying, Dave?
Yeah.
That's it, right?
Yeah, the intention of these articles, to summarize, is to present a comparative analysis against the $23,570,000 that it would cost to renovate, that we would present a second number in comparison for what it would cost if we ripped down TCP and constructed a new building on the same footprint. So that the town would have both of those to compare, so that when they voted for the construction of the renovation, they'd at least know in their minds, are we getting bang for our buck for that 23 million some odd dollars by renovating a 70-year-old building, or would it be better for us to look at a different option?
Well, so why is that so complicated? I don't get it. You said you were worried about people walking out of there, not understanding. Why is that so? That's two numbers. So what's going to cost to build a new one? It's going to cost to renovate, right?
I understand
Is
your...
that simple? Or, I don't know, maybe I'm looking at it wrong or something, but.
Well, I think
I
Mr.
understand.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I just was going to say, I understand what you're saying. I would hate for that to happen. I'm not saying that it will. I'm just saying that that would not be a very good outcome, in my opinion.
As Mr. Beardmore said in public comment, one of the issues that will be raised is that if the town had already decided, we're convinced we need a new town hall and we need new space or whatever, and that was the site, then the two comparison numbers would be easy. But we pursued the renovation of TCP first because the building is already existing and people understood that. He even identified that. He says people understood that. If you're looking at tearing it down and building it up, there's going to be other things like, first of all, what is the cost perspective? What is more valuable, one or the other? And if it's going to be destroyed, then is that the location, now that it's leveled and it's plain ground, is that the place we want to put it? That's going to be raised by people. And that's a discussion to have before people make the decision on the renovation or a new building. I think that's going to be one of the major issues that's raised, I'm sure.
And by the way, that's another reason why we wanted to be here before you this evening, because we're very, I think I mentioned that we're very, the committee has been very careful to do our job, stick to our charge, and we feel that that discussion is outside of our charge. Okay, so the discussion, if the town meeting decides to vote down a renovation and it becomes I guess what I'll call a larger discussion, the discussion moves to building a new building on a different site with a different program that diverges from the charge of our initial committee, then more input is certainly needed from the committee's charge, or would have to be modified, or a new committee would have to be formed, or something, so, and we're very keenly aware of that. So it's another reason why we're here, sort of saying that out loud in public, in front of your board, that we take our job seriously. We are trying to do what the charge was, which was originally 2.5 years ago, which was to develop a cost and bring a renovation of TCP for town, hall, school, and community uses to design development phase, and that's what we've done.
Yep.
And when we got it, and it took a long time, not the least of which was because we got saddled with a pandemic. So, I mean, there's a lot of factors here that have gone into that. But we do feel an obligation to bring that number forward. And, I think that at the end of the day, your board certainly has to bless these articles, and we've heard that there's split, and I think that gives us what we need to know personally.
Yeah.
We, like I said earlier, we want to put the town in a position to act on this, but we do not categorically want to convey that we're pushing this forward faster than, that we're trying to ram ahead faster than it should be. So, I don't know.
I think there's going to need to be some conversation within the committee about how to respond to what we've all heard tonight in this meeting. I'm in agreement with Mr. Marino as far as I don't know if this is a complicated question for the community. Do you want to spend $23 million renovating a building, or do you want to spend $23 million building a new one? I think, I don't know many, there are people who will want to renovate the building. I think the overwhelming majority would probably be in favor of building something new. But I hear what you're saying. We as this board, and this is to you, Mr. Chair, I think we need to have a discussion about the correct if in the perfect world we build this new town hall, what is the best location for it? Because I think it's difficult for us to go before the town in the spring with a plan for the old primary lot with money invested there, then also say, oh, and by the way, should we think about building a new town hall there as well? Or I think we need to vet our properties and see which ones could potentially house a town hall. In my opinion, I think historic New England towns have a town hall in the center of their town. And I understand that we have a big school complex that has grown, but schools can be built anywhere. But town halls, in my opinion, cannot be built on the outskirts of their communities. They need to be built in a centralized location. So I think we are more limited with where town halls can go versus where schools can go, in my opinion. But I think that we need to have a discussion ourselves to put this to bed. And today's, middle of September, we got 2 more months. I'm sure, I think that 2 months is plenty of time to initiate the discussion on the best location of a future town hall if it's not going to be at that site. So that way we can resolve that question and move forward.
If I could just,
Mr. Franco.
I agree to an extent with what Mr. Marino and Mr. Jeffries are saying in as far as it goes. If the only two choices before the town were chocolate ice cream or vanilla ice cream, which one do you want? It would be easy. But that is not what we are facing here. It's not Article 2 or Article 3. It could be neither. It could be that the town rejects both, and that's the big danger. So,
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Marino?
Greg, I don't want you to misread my emotional responses to this.
I'm a
I totally,
grown-up, I understand.
no, but you know how I commend you all.
I know.
This is frustrating, it's gotta be.
I get it.
And I get it, and I feel that. I'm feeling it right now from your group. And that's what's prompted and to defend myself when I call the voters malevolent, last spring, we sat here and looked at articles that were presented to the town meeting, several articles having to do with these buildings, and if you remember, voted for yes, voted for no, voted for yes, voted for, just back and forth, and it's frustrating. It's just a frustrating situation. I feel it from you. That's all I want to tell you. So you guys are doing an unbelievable job, but boy.
But we appreciate that, thank you.
if I could just add one more. I just want to say, I think everyone up here totally appreciates the job of this committee, and I think the disagreement here is entirely in good faith. I'm coming from the perspective is I don't want to see all the work you've done get tanked because we pulled the trigger too soon. You've invested tons. Yeah, if we've been at this 200 years, that makes another 6 months seem even less significant. And
our employees might disagree.
So I just the fear I have is that the entire thing gets all the work that you have done gets flushed down the toilet. If we just take that extra few months and make a clear case for whichever article the board decides to sort of endorse, but that's all. So I don't think anybody doesn't appreciate what you've done. We totally appreciate it, and I think we're just taking a different perspective on what to do in the immediate.
Yeah. You have Mr. Blatt over your shoulder, by the way.
Oh. No, I just wanted to say that I interpret it that way. So I appreciate you saying that, but that's how I'm interpreting it, as good faith discussion. We're here, as I said, I think in my initial remarks, that at the very least was to have a discussion like this, right? Sure. We need to have this with your board. We need to have it in the public forum. This is sort of a good place to do that because you get more viewers than we get for our meetings. But
I'm not sure how many, but some.
But I appreciate those comments. Go ahead, Dave.
Dave Blatt, 411 Goodrich. I'm taking off my hat as a committee member, and I just want to speak as more of a citizen on this thing. So first thing I have is on the 23 million, that part of that 23 million we have to understand is the interior, the stuff, the projectors, the tables, the chairs, and things like that. So, obviously what we're trying to do, what it sounds like to me the committee's doing, is trying to bring a comparison just to the voters. And and just being financially prudent with the town's money more than anything else. The comment about, the concern about that the voters won't understand, to me, it's the voters that do show up for town meeting, the people who are there, if they've been able to understand the budget talks, if they've been able to understand those spreadsheets that are thrown up there, if they're able to understand all of that, they're going to understand the discussion of whether it's to renovate or rebuild. And this, the other part of this is to renovate or rebuild under the constraints that we had with the Passios building. So one of the big things that this committee did was it spent a good 6 to 9 months listening to the public, listening to all concerned citizens, listening to all the town boards, the town members, everything like that. We discussed that at length of what would be the best for that building. But in the end, you only had a certain amount, you had a certain building that we had to live with. So that's my other concern, is with Article 3, is that really what we want to do? If we were able to say we're going to build new, what does that new look like?
Well, That's
Exactly.
another, exactly, Mr.
Right.
Platt. That's another whole discussion that doesn't exist when you renovate.
Well, so however, I feel that the first and second articles are important to be able to move to the third. It's setting the people's mindset. It's setting what's going to happen to, and even if we don't have the third article, but the first and second articles need to be taken care of. We need to be able to say, okay, here's what it costs to rebuild. Here's what it would cost if you built something new with the same idea. If the numbers are the same, people can decide what they want to do. If not, they can decide that they can build a building that might be more energy efficient, able to last longer, able to do other things, because in the end, we still have a 70-year-old exterior, 70-year-old building that we're starting with, and things like that. So I believe that this committee has worked hard for many, many months. I was going to say years. Actually, we've been we're several years now. Okay, we've been working on this thing.
I think there's a consensus on this board that that is exactly true, yes.
And so we would just, I had the feeling as the committee is we would like to, or get off the pot, okay, type of thing. Because it is one of those things. We're looking at it as we wanted to bring it to spring meeting. We looked at the numbers and we said, this is definitely, based on what we had, we felt it wasn't going to fly that well. So we appreciated the town voting to let us do an apples to apples comparison on this thing. And that's what we're looking to try to do. I believe the committee is trying to get to that point and trying to push this along. And if the town voted at town meeting to say renovate, I say the cost of a special town election is minimal to move something forward that quickly in this town. So, as we all gone through. So, anyway, that's my whole thing. So.
Thank you, Mr. Blaine.
You've given us a lot of time. So, when do you have to vote on, when does the warrant close?
September 28th at 5 p.m.
Which is,
It's a Tuesday.
But
2 weeks from tonight, that's when it.
That's when it closes, so you
Yeah.
can submit them, but we have passed.
you have to
that
vote, I know,
consent.
I'm just trying to
Till,
decide what
the select board votes on it October 19th.
Right, so we have until October 19th
okay,
to decide what gets printed.
okay.
So we can remove
So-
things up until that point. I'd rather not wait till October 19th, so probably the latest we're talking about is like the first week in October.
Right, but I'm just suggesting that we have a, I don't think the select board is in a position to vote on these articles this evening.
Mr. Chair, I would agree. I would say that we can, personally make a decision here, but first of all, there's not a 5 members, so they couldn't have a consensus anyhow.
Yeah.
And I would look at it as the select board would have final decision on what gets on the warrant anyhow.
Yeah,
We can only just present the articles, we're not the ones
right.
in the position to.
But I would suggest that we have at least another meeting here, that we can discuss this internally with our committee based on this discussion that we've had tonight, and perhaps provide them more feedback prior to when they have to make a decision.
And be here the night that that's on.
In request that we-
I'll be here as a citizen no matter what.
Yeah, I think town manager has been wanting to say
Oh,
something.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I just had one comment to make, and I don't mean to muddy the waters any further, but possibly a consideration would be if funding articles are not included in the warrant, what we did with the primary school was a non-binding question, because I don't believe the report article would give the committee direction on the next steps, but a non-binding question, given a comparative analysis, may provide direction.
Mm-hmm.
Dancing around the issue.
Yeah.
I like your idea. I was thinking the same.
Food for thought.
Yeah, all right. Well,
Food-
am I
food-
correct in saying that you are not likely to call a vote on this evening?
I'd say you are highly,
So
it's highly probable we will not
What?
call a vote, yes.
why don't we,
Well, because we're not going to get anywhere. It's going
Yeah.
to be 2-2.
yeah, so why don't we put this on our next agenda, and we'll,
We will put this on, now, Mr. Jeffries, you are not here next week.
That's correct.
All right.
well,
so-
our meeting will not be,
I
take
know,
place
I'm
prior
just
to
offering,
that.
so, and
Yeah.
we don't have a meeting on the 28th, so we have to put it on the 5th. So that's going to be the meeting that we're going to make the decision. If
Okay.
You
And
are
we've-
more than welcome to be at that meeting. We will invite you if you want.
And we've submitted them, right? So we've
Yep.
sort of
Yeah, they're in
checked
there.
that box, okay.
Yep.
So,
So you don't have to be here as a committee, but you can be here individually.
okay, well, I think we'd like to be, so if you would be so kind as just tell us when it's going to be on,
Okay. Yeah, just,
that'd be great. Thank you for
oh,
your
thank
time.
you. Again, if there's one thing we're unanimous about is that, we certainly appreciate all the hard work, and we do not minimize what that work is. I mean, there are some committees that work, and there are some committees that work, all right? And you guys have put a ton of effort into this, and all your prior members, there have been people who've left the committee over the years, and we realize that. And I think I'll speak for all of us, I think we're all trying to approach it from how to maximize that effort so we get something as a result in the end. I think that's what we're all going for. We have different ways of approaching it, and we have different logic, but I think that's what we're all trying to do.
And I, for one, have faith in the process. So I appreciate that you've allowed us to embark on it this evening, and we will look forward to meeting up with you soon.
I appreciate that, and I will try to persuade as many benevolent voters that we have out there.
All right.
Mr. Chair, not to belabor this, but could I just ask for clarity from Mr. Blatt on one thing? Are you, it seems like are you of the opinion that Articles 2 and 3 should appear together at the same town meeting? Because it sounded like you were saying something like, well, why don't we work on 1 and 2?
Thank you.
I believe that 1 and 2 are critical.
Yeah.
I believe that 3 is opening up another can of worms in a way. So as a personal thing, because like I say, I personally feel that we had to say no to folks that we could have said yes to. We could have done other things, and it could be shaped as something different for this community, except we had to live in the constraints that we had of that building. What could you fit into that structure and what we can do? So I do believe that if it comes out to be where we have an idea of how much it costs a square foot, it's a whole different discussion when it comes to what to do with that, what to do next on that.
Okay.
Because there was many groups that we had to say no to on things.
Is there not some advantage, though, to having, for the purposes of comparative analysis, questions 2 and 3 before the town meeting at the same time, so that, there's the immediate comparison right there?
So I do believe there's the benefit of having 2 and 3 together. However, I'm not sure if I agree that we're ready for 3 without some other group that's saying, is that the best site? Is that the best use? Yeah. And something like that. That's all I'm saying, is that, I don't necessarily say that that's, I don't want to necessarily build this. I would look to see what I can do with this town.
All right.
I do want to belabor something, but it's a new point.
And I want to respond to that.
Okay, and one of the things I want to ask is if in this process that's getting underway for a replacement, a new building, you have all the numbers for the town hall part, the school part, the community part of what was asked for as square footage, right?
Correct.
I would recommend, because this is going to come up, if you did exactly 1 for 1, if you did all of those 3 in one new building, but what each one of those components, if it's going to be a square foot cost, what each one would be, because I think, as Mr. Beardmore said, and again, I agree with him, if we're going to go with new, people may say, you know what, then maybe I don't want the whole scope of everything. Maybe
Right.
I want to pare it down, maybe do
Right.
only 1 of the 3, maybe do 2 of the 3.
Right.
So that's going to be a piece that people are going to want to know, I think.
Well, we can look to do that. I just wanted to be clear that Article 1 would be an update article. That would be the article that we presented the comparative analysis for the new build. Because the $54,000 that we're spending does not get us to design development stage for a new building. Okay, so the $54K that we're spending here, just so everybody understands, does not get us to a point where we would be ready to ask the town for hard construction dollars for that project. Okay? We would have to spend something in the realm of another few $100,000 to advance that process to a point where we would be ready to ask the town for funding for a new building. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
So Article 1 presents the comparative cost analysis that, as we sort of said it in the town meeting, is a better than a napkin sketch, and now we need to have good numbers, but they're not gonna be at a point where we're ready to go forward and get a bond, go off for bonding on it, right? So Article 1 would be a comparative analysis. Article 2 would be the renovation. We do have enough for that, because we spent $265,000 to get that number. We have enough for that. Then Article 3 then would be to advance the $54,000 to the same level, advance those plans for the new build to the same level that we have for renovation, right? So Article 3 that we're proposing to, just so everybody's clear, would be additional design funding to advance those to design development, so that we would be in a position in a future meeting to ask the town for funding on that, if you know what I'm saying. So there's a lot that's there. And I know that we've said a lot. And I know that might not help us in the spirit of trying to advance advance things, because it is added steps. But I just want to make sure everybody's clear about what we'd be asking.
I want to reiterate something you said earlier, and I think that in the effort to advance that, this kind of discussion in a public forum between the two committees is hugely helpful. And before any number, that's why I felt the way I did about the articles. Before we do any number, we'd have to have several of these so that people can go back and listen to ideas. And if somebody said, did you think about this? We'll be able to point to someplace and say, yeah, we did think about this. And this is what the discussion came from,
I understand.
instead of just bringing something out of,
Right.
you know, as from their point of view, out of nowhere.
Understood.
So,
And that was part of our thought process for asking for some
oh,
time.
and I
to
think
see
you
this.
were absolutely right. Again, I appreciate it. Please extend to all those members. Oh, yeah, sure.
Brian Leighton, 88 Beachview, part of the committee, TCP committee. I believe that the first two articles are strongly related to the TCP committee, and I think we didn't want to leave, if the price comes out for a new build, that it's more affordable to go with a new build. We didn't want to leave the town sitting there on their hands, not having an option to make that new build. So I think looking at the article, it's more focused from that TCP committee design of what to put in that article, that third article of a new build. But really, I see it as it's something that maybe the board should be looking at of what they would want for a new build. Maybe it's a different plot. Maybe we don't want to do it at the TCP location. And maybe it would be the board, the select board, coming up with the third article rather than the TCP coming up with that third article that's more focused on the TCP land.
Sure.
Something to think about.
May I ask, Mr. Lane, since you represent the school committee on this board, is it possible to ask the school committee in an upcoming meeting for them to provide an opinion about if this were to be a new build, if they have any thoughts, opinions about a town hall being located there, about basically the uses that are being proposed now? Do they have any objections in a new build to any of those uses, given its proximity to the schools? Because this is one of the points that has come up multiple times, and I'd like to get the school committee's official position on that, so that way we can move forward with that position.
Yes, I can do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now I will say, thank you all for coming here, and extend to those on your board or committee who were not here, and thank them for all their time and effort too. And we will continue this conversation. It was a very productive conversation.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
49 will adjourn. I'll take a motion. Second. All in favor? Aye. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, town manager report.
Let's start with the weekly announcement of existing vacancies. There are 2 vacancies on the Architectural Preservation District Commission, 1 citizen at large and 1 representative from the Historical Commission, 1 vacancy on the Bylaw Review Committee, 1 vacancy on the Capital Planning Committee, which is a citizen at large appointed by the town moderator, 2 vacancies on the Commissioner of Trust Funds, which is a joint appointment between the Commissioner of Trust Funds and the Select Board until the next annual town election, multiple vacancies on the Economic Development Committee, 1 vacancy on the Senior Work-Off Program Committee, and 1 associate vacancy on the Zoning Board of Appeals. Anyone interested in serving on these boards and committees can fill out the application form, the application forms are on the town website, and complete them and return them to the Select Board's office. Current employment opportunities with the town. Currently, we have job postings for a board and committee clerk, which is a part-time, non-benefited position, a digital services staff librarian, which is a part-time benefited position, a assistant to the sewer business manager, which is a part-time, non-benefited position, a seasonal cemetery labor position, and a public access videographer position, which is a part-time, non-benefited position. More information on these positions can be found on the town website, which is located under the Employment Opportunities tab. I'm going to skip, there's an item on, or you want me to skip over this one until we get to the 671
Sure.
West
Yeah,
Street?
that makes sense. Yep.
Okay. Follow-up from the DPW, the line striping that was supposed to occur this previous Sunday had to be pushed out by the contractor to tonight. And the DPW director also followed up with Mass DOT on 2 out of the items that were raised at the last meeting. And one was about road markings on Mass Ave and the right-hand turn lane also that goes into Lunenburg Crossing. Mass DOT will be scheduling to have the current markings restriped, and they expect that this work will be completed fairly quickly. In regards to the right-hand turn lane, they conducted the analysis at Route 2A, Electric Ave, and at Lunenburg Crossing driveway with a left turn lane, a through lane, and a right turn lane on Route 2A westbound approach, and found acceptable operations. However, it is not an easy striping fix, as the outside lane currently accommodates the free right turn from Chase Road. Given this complexity, this change would require a review of the operations of both Route 2A, Electric Ave, and Lunenburg Crossing, and Route 2A, Chase Road intersections, as well as the segment of Route 2A between the two intersections. This review requires additional data collection, which they can schedule now that traffic volumes seem to be closer to normal, but will take some time. Mass DOT also said they will be removing the conflicting right turn only sign. Information technology updates, update on the remote meeting coordinator position. The remote meeting coordinator position will be filled by Heidi Spinney, and this transition will begin this Thursday. An email will be sent out to all staff and board and committee members to notify them of who to contact to schedule Zoom meetings. IT assessment. With the departure of the IT director, I've engaged an IT consultant to come in to provide an assessment of our IT needs. This assessment will audit our core IT infrastructure, storage of data, and capital needs. This transition will also provide an opportunity to engage with a company that specializes in security assessments and a cybersecurity posture review. Another component of the assessment will be the town's phone system that was installed around 2010, and I plan on having a further update on this topic next week.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Records management. I've engaged a consultant to come in to assess the status of our records management. This company, King Information Systems, has been in business since 1972 and has provided records management services to approximately 160 communities in Massachusetts. Yesterday, I went around with a representative from this company to all of our town buildings to meet with staff to conduct a preliminary assessment. The next step will involve the company spending 3 to 4 days performing a complete assessment of all our records and submitting a written report on creating a new records management system. Typically, towns that implement a records management plan will eliminate up to 30% of their current records due to duplication. And this will also catalog all archive records for retrieval purposes and timely disposition according to the state retention schedule. So basically in a database where everything's by touch keystroke, we can locate where all the records are and when they should be disposed of. This will also ensure we utilize the appropriate amount of space for records that we are required to keep until they can be disposed of. We should have a cost estimate for this in time for the fiscal '23 capital planning process. Update on the home rule petition for the library trust funds. Representative Kushmarek notified me last week that the bill to authorize the library board of trust funds to invest the library trust funds trustees to invest the library trust funds has moved to the third reading. Authorized change to assessor's records on 26 Sunset Lane. Another parcel has been corrected in the assessor's records based on the relevant town meeting and deed information. 26 Sunset Lane was identified as owner as unknown under the care and custody of the select board, but in fact it is part of a bigger parcel of the Robs Hill conservation property. This has now been changed from owner unknown to the town of Lunenburg / conservation. New growth. The assessor's office has submitted the required forms to the Department of Revenue to certify new growth. The new growth figure submitted was $430,254, which is $149,664 more than the annual town meeting estimate for new growth. This will eliminate the deficit of $126,551 that was due to the final state aid figures, which was a direct impact of an increase in school choice and charter assessments to the state.
That's great news.
It was great news. So thank Sue Byrne for getting that done, especially before she's retiring
Before her
next week.
retirement, yes.
So she was determined and are very thankful for that. Participation in the Lunenburg High School civics class discussion. Annually, I've attended Mrs. Foyle's civics classroom discussion related to their community service learning projects. This is an opportunity to speak with students about current issues within the community, and I will be participating again this year.
I'll be happy to join you if so invited.
State budget and legislative updates. So I attended a Town Administrators Association meeting last week, and as part of that, we heard updates from the new MMA Legislative Director, David Kaufman, and Legislative Analyst, Jackie Lavender Bird, on the following. The state closed out the fiscal '21 state budget with a $4 billion surplus, largely due to actual tax collections exceeding estimates. The governor has filed a supplemental budget bill that includes using these funds to replenish the state's stabilization fund that originally was going to be drawn down as part of the budget and to support the unemployment fund. The MMA has asked that the supplemental budget also include an additional $200 million for Chapter 90 funding. So that has yet to be decided. The state will be receiving $5.3 billion in ARPA funding, and the governor has issued a short-term proposal for $2.9 billion of these funds, and on such items as housing, water and sewer infrastructure, economic development, and environmental funding. The state is currently discussing the proposal, and it was also noted that given the ARPA funding is proposed to be spent on water and sewer infrastructure and environmental programs, there is a high likelihood that there will be matching funds from these programs that the towns would be eligible to tap into. So we should be flexible in how we plan the use of our ARPA fundings as well. In terms of current bills before the legislature, the state is in the midst of the redistricting process. They are debating the Votes Act, which is a same-day voter registration bill. And there are several bills that could affect host community agreements with cannabis retailers and a sports betting bill.
Regarding the redistricting, have they given us what our new census numbers are? Yet?
No, that will trickle down eventually. It takes some time before we'll see those. An update on COVID in Lunenburg. The weekly update from the Board of Health on the total number of new cases reported between August 22nd and September 4th was 60. The prior 2-week period had a total number of 38 new cases. The current positivity rate for Lunenburg as of September 4th was 7.15%. So we're trending in the wrong direction.
Yep, pretty strongly in the wrong direction.
In announcements of meetings, events, and other announcements, the farmers market is being held on the Ritter Lawn every Sunday until October 10th, 10 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And the fall special town meeting is Tuesday, November 16th at 7 p.m. Warrant articles are due on Tuesday, September 28th at 5 p.m.
Any questions for the town manager? Seeing none. Okay, current business, disposition of parcel 7 of 671 West Street. The skipped over portion of your,
Yes, so I reached out to the chairman of the Open Space Committee, Brandon Kibbe, to get their input on this. Essentially, they have discussed this at previous meetings of the committee, and they're of the opinion that the board, with the prior authorization of the town meeting votes, that the board should proceed with those specific parcels that were identified for disposition. Further, that they would, if the decision was, of the board was to transfer the remaining land of 671 to open space, that they would make all efforts to dispose of those particular, make it available to the abutters that were part of that previous town meeting authorization for those pieces of that parcel before it was transferred. Because once it's transferred to open space or conservation, it's an act of the legislature to remove it.
right, I mean, I don't know, it's a huge piece of property, I don't know why. I mean, thinking about it more, I don't know why we would want to transfer it. Unless we have a plan to do it. You know, so, because that does, again, provides a big, that was kept initially, and I know when we built the high school, there was talk, because that was what that land was being held for, to build a school in that area, was not used, but that doesn't mean it won't be in the future, so. Anyway, as far as the disposition, given that news, and you're saying it would cost relatively nothing to go out and advertise this again, right?
The time of the assistant town manager.
Yeah, so, I have no problem with going out for that parcel again, if the people are done, but I mean, I don't want to keep doing this piecemeal.
I'm in favor of supporting that as well.
I too.
Same.
Okay, unanimous. Do you need a vote?
I do not.
Okay.
Doesn't hurt, but.
Formalize it?
All right, I would entertain a motion that we authorize the town manager to advertise parcel 7 as part of the disposition of 671 West Street.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? None. Old business, discussion on the special town meeting warrant articles. So, it was one major addition, I guess, or request. It's not, it hasn't been added there, I guess, yet.
The Historical Commission hasn't been added yet. They're meeting with Town Council on Monday during monthly office hours, so the wording may change. What they put together
Okay.
was in
So
very
we'll,
draft form.
did everybody receive that and read it?
Yes.
Okay, so, since they're meeting with town council, there, some of my initial comments were the legality of those proposed fines, so.
I'd still like to talk about it, to perhaps influence that discussion about how they proceed forward.
Sure.
So, I mean, is it possible to share this on Zoom? So what we received was a note from the Historical Commission to update the, see if the town will vote to amend the Code of Lunenburg as applies to Chapter et cetera, to better define the parameters and reporting responsibilities. Well, I'm not reading the right section, but the gist of this is to address the area of the demolition delay bylaw, which was recently amended at town meeting this past spring, and this is a proposal from the Historical Commission that will do a couple of things. So currently, what the bylaw says is that if a building or structure is determined to be a significant building under this bylaw, the building commissioner shall impose a demolition delay of 540 days from the date of the notification. And that what they're looking to add in here is additional language that would require it to be secured to the satisfaction of the building commissioner and the historical commission. There's also an addition here to add in a bi-monthly report. There's also a request to require, as part of that, excuse me, that the buildings be listed with a licensed real estate broker. They want to add in the language experienced in older historic homes, an estimate of rehabilitation and restoration cost of the building or structure. Current bylaw, they're adding the language from a contractor experienced with the restoration of historic properties. And notably, they're looking to add in additional clauses, one of which would give any person violating the aforementioned shall be subject to a fine or penalty in the amount of $300, with each day to be considered as a separate violation. So my thoughts are, first, I find this to be offensive on a level that I probably haven't found most proposed things to be offensive. I think this is offensive to the concept of a democracy. A $300 a day fine is a $9,000 a month fine. And over the course of a year, that is outrageous to me. It's really hard to wrap my head around how, as a government, we can even, in seriousness, propose something as, to me, obscene as that. For someone not maintaining a building to the satisfaction that a bylaw requires, without consideration for the various circumstances that would go on. Now, I had a conversation to figure out, is there any other thing that we fine $300 a day for, or anything remotely close to that? And the answer is no, that even a violation of the Wetlands Protection Act doesn't result in a fine of this exorbitant. This seems to me, I don't want to dwell too much on this, it seems in its current form, again, I think it's, as I noted at the very beginning of this meeting in public comment, that we all come here with a different frame of reference. And the frame of reference I have is probably a more military one, you know, in a war zone, working in a hospital during a war and seeing soldiers dying and being maimed and wondering if this was what their sacrifice was about. Now, obviously, it's not apples to apples here, but it's understanding that a lot of people have sacrificed to make a democracy what it is. And was that so that we could turn around and issue out $9,000 a month fines to a board that's not, to an appointed board, elected or appointed, it makes no difference. It's still, to me, equally obscene. So I would hope that when we get to the point of considering this in whatever form it's going to be in, I certainly hope that the language of the fine will be removed, the expectation that a board will be able to vet residents' vendors, which is what adding in this language about vendor experience does, is it creates an opening for the board to then question the experience of vendors, which essentially is allowing the Historical Commission to vet the vendors of who people choose to hire to work in their homes. I mean, like I said, I don't want to dwell. I find this to be offensive to a democracy and obscene in its presentation.
I have concerns over the same provisions, and particularly on the fining provision, which I find to be unconscionable. I also don't like the idea of dictating people's ability to freely contract with whomever they want to contract with, as long as objectives are met. I mean, who cares who performs the work as long as the objective is met in the end? And I think that is overreach. So I just want to say in advance, you know, this is going to be spoken on next week, I realize, but I'm saying right now, in its current form, there's no possible way I could support this going before town meeting in this form. So that's just a sort of an advisory for who's ever drafting this thing over the next week. That's all.
No way.
No way.
I will say that, as I said when we introed this agenda item, so I'm going to let town council review the finding. I also find the finding, I don't even know if it's something that we can legally do, and even if we could, I don't know that it's legally enforceable, because, again, you know, and not to mention the cost. So I think I share that. The thing I share equally, and that none of the previous members spoke of, is letter D, which, remember, this is an amendment or modification to the demo delay bylaw. So if somebody comes to the Historical Commission and asks for a demo of something in its existing form, the first thing they're having them do is spend a whole ton of money to button up something that may not be buttoned up to begin with. And that seems to me more objectionable than anything. Like, you're making me spend money on something that, you know, I'm asking to tear down. Maybe that's why I'm asking you to tear it down. You know, so again, the prior condition of a building has got to be taken into account. You can't make somebody button up a building while they're trying to get it demolished. You can certainly say you can't do anything to it to further cause its poor condition, or to further its condition worsening. But to have them say you have to board up the windows, you got to do this, you got to make it so that vermin can't get in. Well, I know people whose houses vermin get in. So, I mean, how airtight does this thing have to be? I mean, are you supposed to shrink wrap the whole thing? I mean, again, some of this makes no logical sense. And I think it is, in many regards, large overreach. Now, that being said, I also understand that the frustration that the demo delay bylaw has been used as just a timer, like nobody tries to do anything of substance. So the reporting part of it, and in my mind, there should be an ability to delay the timer every time a report, the monthly reporting makes sense, or the bi-monthly reporting makes sense, to show that the person is actually trying to do something. You can't just say, okay, I asked for it, and I'm just going to set the timer for whatever, how many days it is, 180 days, or what is it, 500, I don't even,
540.
540 days, just say, I'll just wait it out. You know, they should be able to push that deadline further when the person isn't actively doing anything. So I understand what the impetus behind the modification is, but I don't think this is well-crafted, and I think it really does exhibit incredible amount of overreach that I think is going to be problematic for this board as well as for town meeting eventually. Okay, but we will keep that, wait till we get it back from them in final wording from town council, and then we will put it on the agenda again. Well, I mean, the special town meeting warrant articles are always on the agenda anyway, so. Okay, we have another meeting next week. We will not be with, Mr. Jeffries will not be here with us. Hopefully, Mr. Dwyer will be back. And then on the 28th, no selectmen meeting, but we do have the community outreach meeting for Uma Flowers, looking to open up a cannabis retailer in town.
Can we just go back to the special town
Oh, yes,
meeting
I'm
warrant
sorry.
for a second?
Yeah.
Just to follow up to that discussion, the Historical Commission was invited to attend next week's meeting, so they will be
Okay, good.
attending next, to discuss this.
Excellent.
Also, on the draft warrant, you'll notice an additional article from last week was an easement article for the Lunenburg Central property. That would be a requirement if easement was given to the town for that property. So we just need to, and I've notified Mr. Brennan that we need the plan information before the warrant is finalized, if this is going to end up on the warrant.
Okay. Excellent. Any other things? I didn't mean to rush by that.
Nope,
Okay.
that's all.
All right, so 21st, we have a meeting, 28th, the outreach meeting. Any public comment from the public? Mr. Passios?
Dave Passios, 56 Whiting Street, speaking as a citizen. A number of weeks ago, the DPW director came in, and the garden club that maintains the common in the center of town, there was quite a bit of discussion about the tree that was ultimately removed. Just a quick comment on that tree. According to information on one of the Facebook pages, that was a memorial tree. I've not verified that, but apparently it was. So it triggered in my mind a concern, and actually I navigate those intersections around that common on a regular basis now. I'm in town a lot more than I was previous to this year. And I'm seriously concerned about the fact that there's going to be another issue with line of sight for traffic turning off of 2A onto Main Street and a couple other directions. And if you sit in front of Town Hall in a vehicle and you look over across Route 2A, compact cars driving in the eastbound lane of Route 2A, you can't see them. They're hidden by the growth on the common. So I don't know how that affects line of sight for actually flow of traffic, but there's at least 3, if not 4 more trees that are still there that are already over 6 or 7 feet tall, and they're going to continue to grow. We've got other types of foliage and flowers that are over 3 feet high that are blocking line of sight. I'm not faulting the gardeners. It's beautiful, but I think as that piece of property being under the care and custody of the Board of Selectmen, I think it should have a hard look taken at it as to asking them to limit and possibly remove some of the possible line of sight issues that are going to develop, even with the removal of the big tree.
What is the line of sight that you cited? I'm trying to envision it, but I'm not envisioning
One in
it.
particular, trying to turn right onto Lancaster Ave on Route 2A. If you're in a certain position trying to look back towards Main Street and, a right on red turn, you can't see the vehicles coming, making that last kind of arch coming from in front of Town Hall to the intersection. So you can't see a car that might come through the intersection when you're trying to do this right on red after stopping. And I haven't analyzed the rest of it, but all that stuff is starting to get so tall that lines of sight have got to be impeded.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Mr. Passios.
Is somebody who wants to speak for?
Yeah, I've asked them to unmute, but, there we go.
Hi, this is Rhonda Licio, 181 Reservoir Road.
Good evening.
I just wanted to Hello?
Yes, I said good evening,
Hello?
Ron.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to reiterate my concerns that I expressed at annual town meeting regarding the TCP project. The specific example I'll use that I used back then was 5,000 square feet for the school's extended day program. At 5,000 square feet for that renovation project, it would have been over $1.6 million for just that program. And the best estimate, which I voted against spending the extra money to compare apples to apples, it was 5,000 square feet. The best estimate was around $275 a square foot, which is still over $1.3 million. Based on the future needs outlined by the school district at the symposium almost 2 years ago, I cannot support this type of spending or borrowing for a program we are not mandated to have and is supposed to be self-funded and should be the item of the lowest priority on the school's list that they presented at the symposium. Not only do I believe spending over $1 million is not in my best interest as a taxpayer, I do not even believe it is in the best interest of the school district. We are talking about a program which occurs before and after school, and there are 3 school buildings. So I do not consider questioning these as needs to be malevolent. I consider it to be responsible. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Any public comment from the board? Hearing none. We will be going into an executive session. I would be entertaining a motion to enter into executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, Reason Number 6, to consider the purchase, exchange, taking, lease, or value of real property if such a discussion may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the governmental body, and to adjourn the meeting after exiting executive session. This is regarding 665 Mass Ave.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote. Mr. Marino.
Aye.
Mr. Franco.
Aye.
Mr. Jeffries.
Aye.
And an aye from me. Good night, everyone. We'll see you next week. Until then, take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Good night.